I'm gonna give you 7 exercises that you can use to become a better rugby player, and we're gonna start right now. When I was at the Olympics in 2021, I was fortunate enough that I got to stay in the same building as Fiji. So I was able to see Fiji's rugby team training on a regular basis. One thing that I noticed is that a lot of ruggers love to do reflexive movements similar to this, where you might see a plate into a hip lock here. Okay, you might see something like this, but not falling over. You might see this try and target that posterior chain. Okay, you might even see them using maybe like a hydro weight, anything along those lines. I think those movements are fantastic. And even where you might see here, boom, boom, like a drop dumbbell snatch. Boom, boom. These are movements that we even use pretty consistently, but in the sport of 15s, I think there's some better movements that we can use that have a little bit more low-hanging fruit. Those movements are fantastic. Obviously, if Fiji's using them and they're doing a lot of specific plyometrics when they warmed up, they did do some lifting as well. But for the normal rugger who's just trying to make some progress, that's trying to get to that next level, one thing I believe that we can do is focus on specific movements in the gym that will transfer really well. And that's gonna take us right into that first one. And this is gonna help us in the scrum. So if we're thinking about the scrum as coming from a standstill, right? So we can see with specific athletes where they're weak and where those weak points will be. And when we did our community vote here on YouTube, I think it was like 55% of fans think that we should be doing more front squats in the realm of rugby. So we're bringing that in right here. And ideally, we would use like that front squat rack position, okay? Like a clean grip. I'm gonna show you from a bodybuilding style. I'm gonna show you something pretty cool here. 1, 2, boom, okay? 1, 2, boom. So that's that front squat. And we're doing that from a standstill, very similar to the scrum. Now I'm gonna demonstrate from a little lower degree. Okay, so now we're gonna be able to target another weak point. And I even think as a strength coach, somebody in S&C, if you're training your guys or your women, you can even use a movement like this with an auditory command to get them to pause, 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 go. Pause, 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 go. And you can even mix that up so that then they start to really hammer that responsive strength, okay? And they have to focus on that trunk control. I think one of the best gym exercises for your core, or for your trunk, is going to be the front squat, especially from the pins. 1, 2, oh, I'm so weak there. 1, 2, boom. Okay, so reflexive movements are great, but I do think the front squat is probably the best. Now, if I'm getting ready for a maul, I've got to get deep. I'm going to be a little bit more dynamic. You're going to be in a very low position. We've got to be freaking strong. I really love the front squat. I really like those reflexive movements. If I get set here on a sled, that's gonna be the second exercise that I think that rugby players could really benefit from. And you could do this almost in the sense that you're timing it. You could figure out how much weight that you need. That's gonna transfer really well. If you have an athlete that's a little bit weaker, then you can start to improve that. You can play around with this as a load and see where you get better benefit or where you get a better response with the athlete. And I believe we should be pretty low here with that nice steep shin angle, driving as hard as possible going forward. So we can go here, and you can even start with that auditory command here. Okay, so we can work through that and build that up over time. Some individuals might even want to pair that front squat with the sled. I don't think that's absolutely necessary, but both of these exercises are a fantastic way to really start to light up and make good progress as a rugger. Now we've got 5 more. This next exercise is a universal movement that we use with our small, really, really fast, quick guys, all the way up to the big dudes who also move at very, very high speed. Some of the best field athletes that we've ever trained have pushed over 150 to 180 kilos on this movement 4 reps, and that's going to be a single leg squat. Get set in position. We talked about in the beginning using the hydro weights, using the reflexive movements. That stuff does train dynamic trunk control. That does train unilateral reflexiveness and quick reaction, but it doesn't train strength in that unilateral position. And I would even argue movements like a front squat, movements like this will transfer to the reflexive movements, but the reflexive movements will not transfer to this. So we've got to think about how we can really take care of multiple different aspects or multiple different strength characteristics in the sport. So we want to get set. I'm going to have that front foot out in front of the pad. Go down. Boom, boom. okay? And you wanna see if the athlete can hold this position stable. You don't wanna be falling all over the place. You don't wanna have them putting that foot down and up, down and up. Usually what I would recommend as a coach, you get one time where you can put it down, but if you do it twice, we're gonna terminate the set and you're gonna go down and wait. And you'll often hear, especially with some meatheads like myself, you'll also hear them say, it's not the weight, it's just the balance. But balance is part of athletics. Balance is part of coordination, okay? So we need to improve that coordination in a unilateral stance. We'll go here on the other leg. Boom, 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 okay? Typically, I do like to do the unbroken movement there, and that's gonna help us really focus on that big time intent. Hit this once or twice a week, one day a little bit heavier, one day a little bit more dynamic, build up over time. It's gonna transfer really, really well. Okay, I might be giving away what that next exercise is, and this is a movement I've seen some individuals in the rugby world in S&C talk about how the hamstring when we're sprinting is really just responsible for like an isometric action, and I don't really believe that. I think that if we're thinking through the lens of knee flexion, an aggressive knee flexion especially, and hip extension, I think we end up seeing that the hamstring is way more dynamic than just that isometric hold, okay, or that isometric stability that it provides at sprinting speeds. Now, the other aspect is that when we're making contact, there's gonna be hip extension, and as we're running in full speed and we need to make cuts, we need to have a strong co-contraction through our knees. So that's where this movement comes into play. We're gonna do a classic Nordic, and I'm gonna give you a little complex because I like to fatigue the hamstrings regarding knee flexion, and I'm gonna show you a little trick that I like to use with a lot of our athletes that we train with speed-based sports. Okay, so we're gonna do a classic Nordic right here, right? Let's go 2 more. Less hip flexion than me, but I'm 40 years old and I have an excuse. Okay, now I want to hold this position. Right now, I can feel this right at the top of my hamstring into my glute. I'm fatigued slightly from that Nordic. Now what I want to do is come down almost to the floor, come back through, and I want to think squeeze at my glutes and my hamstrings, and you're going to freaking feel this, okay? Down, boom, down, boom, down, boom. So now the iso of knee flexion is going to be held by the hamstring. Then the hip extension will also be active from the hamstring. So you're getting like a double whammy here that's going to lead to some really dynamic strength and good strength endurance in the hammy. So here, oh, come back up. I like to do like 5 to 7 of the typical Nordics, and then anywhere from like 12 to 17 as a drop set on those hip extensions, and we will use these together in the exact same set over and over again. So that's one of my all-time favorites. Now, we're gonna get into some big upper body lifts next. Big upper body superset, and inside of our strength training app, Peak Strength, we've got a great group of rugby players training currently. And one of the things that we tend to do in Peak Strength, day 1, we're gonna do some big leg work. Day 2, that's where the upper body work is. And one of the main exercises that we like to use might be like an incline bench, but with a little bit of a twist, okay? So that's where this comes into play. I wanna get set, and rugby players, come on. Start doing some dumbbell work with like 50 kilos or like 40 kilos. We don't need to be down in like 25 to 30 kilo range. Like, you guys are freak athletes. Let's try and push that a little bit. I wanna see some pauses here, okay? So we can pause, press, pause, press, pause, press. This leads to some serious time under tension and some trunk stability. And you can focus on where that weakness is. Now, you could have an athlete pause here. Boom, 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 boom. Or you can have them pause at the bottom, like I just showed you here. Boom, 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 boom. I really like to use dumbbells because of the specificity towards that shoulder stability. I almost dropped that. Okay, that shoulder stability. And then also, if you have to post up on somebody, if you're in an overhead position, if you have to jump, incline dumbbell bench with the pause is fantastic. Now we're gonna lead into that second exercise that I think is really, really good for getting you to have that, we call it mat strength regarding wrestling, but where you're on the pitch and you can just manipulate individuals as easy as possible. That's what this next exercise is gonna do. So this next exercise is something that not everyone will have access to, but one of the awesome parts around Peak Strength is that you can actually replace movements with similar exercises. So the specific movement I'm gonna show you is involving a 2-inch rope. It's involving a sled, okay? If you don't have access to the rope, if you don't have access to a sled, I'm gonna demonstrate this shortly because this is where that trunk work really comes into play, and that grip strength, and that lat stability, and that upper back strength. If you don't have access to this sled, to this rope, you can use movements like a heavier bent over row. Yes, you'll use your hamstring slightly in a heavier bent over row, but it's still a decent replacement. Or you might even see inside of peak strength, you might even see like a weighted pull-up, something like that to really strengthen those lats. So one of the coolest parts around peak strength is that we periodize this entire system using these specific exercises and even providing those exercise replacements. So this movement's gonna look like this, and I wanna think long, big pull, okay? Bring that all the way in on both sides. Don't favor one side over the other. This is another great exercise that you would then pair with that dumbbell incline bench. You hit the dumbbell incline bench with that pause, or the alternating with the pause. You come over, you hit the sled pull. Now you rest for about 2 minutes. Okay, and this is movements that you're gonna see inside of our strength training app, Peak Strength. Head over to peakstrength.app, the Google Play Store or the Apple iOS Store. You can download Peak Strength today. You'll get 7 free days of training based off of being a rugby player. Now, we got a couple other movements, some of which are my all-time favorite for developing a freak rugby player. Rugger. Okay, when we're training an athlete that's going to be involved with a contact sport, okay, contact sport at very high speeds, we've got to make sure that we're training them for speed, for sprints. We also need to make sure that they're able to make contact as quickly as possible with a massive amount of force because we know that they're getting into an opposing object. The opposing object, usually other human beings. So we need to train athletes to light up a lot of weight in a short period of time. And that's where the 2-box snatch comes into play. A lot of you guys are gonna say, I don't wanna snatch, I don't wanna do this. I'm gonna give you some alternatives, okay? So what I wanna see is if everybody can just ditch all of their excuses and just focus on getting this lift upwards of 100 kilos. You're gonna increase your vertical, you're gonna increase that first step, you're gonna increase that contact force. And I always make this argument too. If Caleb Dressel, who's a world champion sprinter in swimming, can power snatch 90 to 100 kilos, I think you ruggers could do that as well. So we'll get set here, just like we're gonna be doing a clean or a snatch, right? So we go a little bit wider than foot width here. I'm gonna pull as quickly as possible, make good hip contact and finish. Boom, okay, come back, boom. One more, boom. Okay, right there. Now, if you don't want to be explosive, if you don't want to rack that weight really fast and have a good strong co-contraction in your shoulders, if you don't want to develop impulse, there's still some other movements that you can use outside of the 2-box to do those things, okay? So the next movement could be something as simple as a muscle snatch, okay? So we get set here. I'll make contact. Oh, fast turnover. And then finally, if you don't want to rack at all, you can do pumps here, repetitively. 2-box snatch is still the best. Use the muscle snatch if you don't want to do the 2-box power. Finally finish with those pulls. Those are what, now I just gave you, I think, 10 gym exercises that you can use to become a better rugby player. Because remember, freaks, if you want to become a champion, you've always got to cultivate your power. Peace.